After Hurricane Katrina in 2005, Congress gave $14 billion tax dollars for the largest U.S. civil engineering project in history to protect New Orleans and reinforce its levees. As the new and improved system faced its first big test over the summer, more cities are facing a costly fight to survive. Lisa Fletcher investigates the complications and questions that remain.
This is South Louisiana, living below the waterline. Canals stretch through neighborhoods. The Mississippi River frames the southern border of New Orleans, and the shores of Lake Pontchartrain lie just beyond the suburbs. Most days, it's a beautiful view, with a fragile balance. But when storms hit, more than 900,000 people count on a thin line of levees to hold back the floodwaters.
We got to remember, on any given day, Mother Nature can break anything built by man.
Army Lieutenant General Russell Honore has seen the worst of times. He coordinated the emergency response to Hurricane Katrina 14 years ago. As commander of Joint Task Force Katrina, he faced the aftermath of a storm, reportedly strong enough to reverse the course of a river.
There are reports that during Katrina, the water in the Mississippi ran north. That's how powerful the surge was.
In 2005, Hurricane Katrina flooded 80% of the city, killed more than 1,800, and displaced more than 1 million people in the Gulf Coast. Many didn't return. To this day, there are homes still untouched, a hospital abandoned. This Six Flags amusement park never reopened. After Katrina, Congress approved billions of dollars to refortify New Orleans. $14 billion went to the largest civil engineering project in U.S. history for the Army Corps of Engineers to build pumping stations, storm barriers, and to reinforce hundreds of miles of earthen levees like these that run along Lake Pontchartrain and form a fragile barrier between the water and the low-lying homes just on the other side. Before Katrina, levees had a single steel piling driven 16 feet into the ground. Now, a T-shaped wall is driven 100 feet down and anchored on both sides, a major upgrade to withstand the force of water. In July, the upgrades passed an important test. As Hurricane Barry barreled toward New Orleans, the Mississippi River was near record highs, from spring storms to the north and nearing the top of the levees. The predicted storm surge, coming from the sea, was the same height as the levees. New Orleans was caught between potential flooding from two sides. But when Barry hit, the levees held. And though flooded with rain, New Orleans was narrowly spared from a catastrophe. But New Orleans Mayor LaToya Cantrell credited luck more than the levees.
Beyond lucky, we were spared. It seemed as those bands moved closer to New Orleans, it seemed to just go around us.
It turns out that even with the expensive new improvements, there are still big problems. The stronger levees will not stop the rain, the greatest threat posed by slow-moving storms. And that danger is compounded by another. The levees are actually sinking. So you expect the levees to fail?
It's not if, it's when. Because they're made out of dirt and rock and concrete, and they can be overmatched either by rainfall or by water surge coming in from the Gulf.
And the price tag of any protection is growing. In the next 20 years, according to one study, protecting all coastal cities in the U.S. with seawalls would require $400 billion. In 19 small communities, the cost to protect property and infrastructure is $1 million per person. One big question is how much good all of that would even do.
You can keep those levees up, but New Orleans is rapidly becoming an island.
LSU professor Ed Richards studies how cities will weather future storms.
Miami, inland flooding would be Sacramento, Tampa. Has a huge risk. North of Virginia Beach is very high risk for flooding.
New York City Mayor Bill de Blasio announced a plan to protect a small slice of Lower Manhattan, including precious Wall Street, from flooding. That would cost $10 billion, some of which would come out of the wallets of American taxpayers.
There are a lot of cities asking for federal funding. There will be more as we continue to see these storms. Is there a point at which the federal government is going to have to choose which cities, quote unquote, get saved and which don't?
The federal government's been choosing forever. A lot of those small, poor communities, Carolinas and the like, maybe they'll get a little bit of relief money. They're not getting any money to save them. Go in the upper Midwest where there's flooding issues. Those folks feel completely abandoned. Money goes to politically powerful, economically powerful cities first. New York City, Miami, those are politically important cities. They'll probably get money long past coastal communities like New Orleans or a lot of the communities in the Carolinas that are basically poor, no real jobs base, no economic base.
It's much like a medieval city where you would build the walls to keep out the invaders. In this case, we're building a ring around the city to keep out the water.
Ricky Boyette is with the Army Corps of Engineers.
Yeah, you're looking at 25-foot high above sea level. So
He remains confident in the $14 billion improvements in New Orleans. But the Corps has notified Congress that the levees may need to be raised even higher, and they'll likely be asking for more taxpayer money.
Some people have suggested this is simply throwing good money after bad. Is there a point at which the money has to stop?
Well, I think it's a component of keeping the system at its level. That's how it has to be done here. They're the strongest levees in the country. They are built to the highest standards that didn't even exist prior to Katrina. So we're fully confident in the levees doing their job.
So they just need to be higher? Is that what you're saying?
You just always have to keep them to that level.
Considering the cost and uncertainties, Professor Richards suggests it might make better sense for people to simply move.
If we were to invest our coastal restoration money as incentives into building new towns inland from the coast, so you create a lot of housing units, and people would organically move away from the coast.
This is the level of the water after it has settled.
In the end, New Orleans residents like Sandy Rosenthal say they hope people will see fit to invest in saving New Orleans, rather than expecting people to move away from America's at-risk coastline.
I only hope that the people of America believe we still need New Orleans. And I haven't even gotten to the fact that New Orleans is a historic gem. And if the country ever lost New Orleans, we would be missed.
And so if the levees are the best we can do, but they're sinking, is there any technology or research going into future options?
Well, even the Army Corps admits it's hard to beat Mother Nature, and the walls and the levees are an imperfect solution. But there is one place that is also built below sea level, and it's trying something different. The Dutch are trying to redirect floodwater and surge water into these catch basins and away from critical infrastructure and housing. So you could kind of call it a go-with-the-flow approach.
But that's expensive, too.
It is, and it is built into what they're doing from the beginning, so it's a little different than what's happening here.
All right. Thanks, Lisa.